Hey, this is Joby, and thank you for listening to the Makerspace podcast. I'm joined today with Dustin Hassenmayer, who was an original co host on the podcast during high school.
Hello. It's good to be back. It's been very long.
Yep. So, just to give you a little story of what's happening here, sadly, I accidentally pressed start streaming before the previous recording here. So, we're doing a second take here, sadly. The first take was beautiful. It was flawless, and I apologize, Dustin, for that technical difficulty.
It's all good. It's all good. My
Yep.
wording will be better this time.
Yes. Hopefully, this take will be much better. So yeah, we'll hopefully it goes smooth this time. So let's talk about how the Makerspace podcast first started. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, beginning of senior year, which would be 2019 to 2020,
Yep.
we had a class called Senior Science Research Seminar. That's always
Yep.
like a tongue twister.
Yeah.
And so basically, we had to come up with we had to think about problems in the world that we encounter, and then try to come up with solutions to them.
Yep.
Um, and then pick one to work on a solution for the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and from that, there was a lot of documentation in the class, um, which led us to the idea. Mostly, Joby was just one day he was like, "Yo, what if we
Yeah.
made a podcast?" Which would be a way to verbally, you'd get a verbal recording
Yeah,
of,
verbally document our work because
yeah,
we took forever documenting our work and it just took so long. It was so
it's
bad.
the most dreadful part of the class.
Yes, like making our prototypes was fun and designing them, but documentation was not fun, especially with how harsh they graded that.
Oh, it was the worst. You'd read a 20-page paper
Yes.
just to every month, just for them to be like, "Nah, I don't like it. I'm
Yeah,
gonna give you
no.
a."
Yeah, restart. Yeah, but we ended up having it. We still had to do the handwritten documentation, which sucked. But we just did podcasts in between it. So like we just do it during it just to like make it fly by quicker. And that
Yeah,
was very enjoyable. We pretty much talked about how our days were and then cool technology we read about online or saw on YouTube. Very fun. So I haven't seen you since I'd say right before we left for college. So how was your first semester of college?
um, it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there wasn't a whole lot to do
Yeah.
with all the restrictions going on,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's a new experience, right? So I didn't get everything I wanted out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just start, but I can still tell college is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's good.
it's just as an engineer, have, from what I've heard, we have the most workload.
Mm.
So I can
Yeah,
already
for
feel
your
that.
school. Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like
because I'll
that's
talk.
everywhere, practically, almost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is it's understandable.
Yeah.
Um, we make the technology that's just improving the world, but it
Hmm.
just kind of sucks.
I got you. What would you say is your favorite class at Lock Haven?
um, I love physics, but
Yeah.
the professor definitely determines a lot to the class.
Hmm.
Um, and the professor is not the most enjoyable guy. Uh, he's hard to get along with.
Yeah, I got
The chicken fingers. Why shut up?
you.
I don't
Bro,
know.
we almost had that. We almost had that. We'll keep going. We'll keep going. That's is that your
Edit this
brother?
out. Yeah,
Oh man. All right. That's fine.
you,
uh
you can edit this out, right? You got that.
what?
You can edit this out, right?
Yes, I can edit this out or we'll keep it in here just as a funny blur for me.
uh, yeah, but pretty much, um, he can be good at teaching.
Mhm.
It's just he's not the most fair person in the world.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of things. I had a big complaint with the final that I
Mhm.
took. in which I like did amazing on it.
Well, yeah, because you
But
had the extra credit, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he gives out extra credit, but like it apparently the way it applies, I ended up not getting any of the extra credit which I earned,
Yeah.
you know, and like he's not finding another way to give that to me,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is frustrating because like my grade's probably still gonna be um, it could be like a B plus probably.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, and that's just not gonna change. But it could definitely just jump to an A.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So
Were you able to have all of your classes in person for the year, or did you have to have online for a portion?
a portion was online,
Okay.
so um, the lab classes were in person,
Yeah.
and the way that worked is like the classes you'd attend online, the lectures you could attend online, but labs, no matter what, like you had to attend. They're
Mm-hmm.
like very strict with that,
Yeah.
which is understandable. But like at the same time, what were they going to do about it? If COVID was even worse, that we couldn't be in person at all,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I found it strange how like ridiculous they were about it. But I mean, at the same time, I get to like see them in person and stuff, which is cool. And
Yeah.
even some classes, um, I have in person.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoyed what was in person because it's so much easier to learn for
In
me personally.
person, yeah, in person is very like much easier to learn with compared to online, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then you get to actually meet the professor more and mainly talk to them more, I would say, compared to Zoom.
you get to make like a connection.
A connection, yeah. I think that's a
Yeah,
major thing that's missing from online compared to in person.
yeah, for sure. That's like the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Were you able to have everything on campus this semester, or did you have off-campus stuff?
so I mean, like I was on campus, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so for the most part, just because it was easier, I'd try to Zoom most things,
Yeah.
which is like it was fine because most of the classes I find easy.
Yeah.
But then when it came to physics and chemistry, which were like the two big classes, I found that like I just ended up going to physics in person just
Hmm.
because like the way he taught and stuff, which is why he decided to get the final in before we went online,
Hmm.
right before Thanksgiving. He had the final then, and it's just because
Make sure
the way,
everyone had everything in their head.
yeah, and
Yep.
like he disapproved of any cheating. Like he absolutely hated that.
Yeah, I get
um,
that.
so
Hmm.
he's an interesting guy.
Yeah. For RIT, it was pretty good. It was also hybrid, like what you were saying, with in person and online stuff on Zoom.
Yeah,
Pretty much all the labs I had, they were in person, and then majority of lectures were online. But my one of my favorite classes, both my favorite classes, they had in-person lectures mainly, but then
yeah,
it transitioned to online once we were like orange phase, which was like the
okay.
second highest level for COVID. Um, but yeah, I would say my two favorite classes would be the electrical engineering practicum, mainly because a lot of the stuff I learned, it I thought it was really cool and interesting, and it helped a lot with my high school project on ways to improve it, which I thought was awesome. And then my second favorite class would be like my English class, and that made it so we had to look at the news a lot and see current events and then understand like different sources of news and then like who writes them and like who are the audiences that look at this or like who funds them and that was a different way of looking at news for me because I never thought about it like that.
Yeah. That's kind of interesting. Just because that could definitely apply to politics a lot. I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
did you guys talk about any like politics?
Oh yeah, we talked about plenty of politics. A lot of it was with Trump's campaign and the election. And then a lot of it related to the Black Lives Matter protests and then COVID in general. But we talked a lot about the election when coming around like November.
Huh.
Yeah,
That's really
yeah, it was a very enjoyable class. It's crazy how the first semester went by though. You know what I mean?
yeah. It
Yeah.
went by very fast.
Yeah,
I think.
like I forget like so much stuff like when that happened over the first semester. And especially
Uh,
like with news like in general and like world events because it's like you forget about so much stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the focus like in college, like you're just there, trying to get your work done and stuff, and you're just
Yeah.
kind of isolated. I'm sure, especially because of COVID.
Mhm.
You didn't really get out, see much. So
Yeah. I think a major thing prior like worldwide I'd say before we left for college and like right before that, well obviously it would be COVID-19, but also with the policing in America because there was all of the Black Lives Matter protests that sparked because of it, and
yeah,
that happened right prior. That was a major thing. What about you?
um, I know one of the big things I heard about, like it was I think literally the day I went to college actually.
Yeah,
Um, it's kind of like in opposition to COVID-19, which is cool.
yeah,
Africa was officially declared polio virus free, right?
yeah.
Which is That's definitely a huge step because Africa. I don't want to say it's the poorest, but
Like least
that
developed.
yeah,
Yeah,
probably least developed, and so it's interesting to see there's some big steps happening, right?
yeah,
Um,
and people forget like they don't see a lot of it, especially because COVID's taken the big like all of the news and stuff, and people gloss
yeah,
over that. Yeah.
because I didn't know a single other person that knew about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just kind of happened.
Yeah. Well, and like the CDC, they've like led the initiative for it for like the past 3 decades with polio, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and there's other obviously viruses they have to get rid of there. And you
exactly.
got the Ebola virus was big.
Yes, that was very big a couple of years ago, I remember.
Uh, and I don't know about the progress on that, but obviously it's gone down
Yes.
significantly.
Yeah.
Um, so they're making progress for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Um yeah, but another big thing that I would say, well, there was the Black Lives Matter protests, and that was very big in the Rochester area, right by RIT. Mainly because of Daniel Prude, with what happened there. And it got people very emotional about it. A lot of protests happening in the area. My English professor actually lives like very close to where the epicenter of like these protests happened, which is
Huh.
which yeah, and he would talk about it a lot in the classes. And I thought that was very interesting. Um, yeah, but that would have been around beginning of September, probably around the 7th, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, I think there was the Bob Woodward interviews with Trump. And then that showed that Trump knew more about the virus early on. And it made the quote about Trump saying, I wanted to always play it down. And then I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic. And that was a
Yeah.
major thing on the news. I remember that.
It's interesting to see his take on that. Um,
With
because
the virus.
obviously,
Yeah.
he's a politician, right? Politician first, for sure. And a businessman. So like something like a virus for him is probably he's obviously going to be one of those people like not that it's a hoax, but more of like it's not a huge deal, I think. And so that's why like here he even says I wanted to always play it down. And maybe even then he didn't even think it was that big of a deal. Um,
Mm,
Obviously it's grown to be a big deal and probably a big role in his election.
mm.
Um, but in the same vein, there was the people who were with him on it. So he did get those people, but obviously there's going to be a majority of people who are more like, okay, COVID-19 is real, and you kind of let it happen and downplayed it. So it did
And
become,
now it's become this, where
yeah,
we're again reaching insane numbers. Um,
yeah.
exactly.
So that was a definitely a major component in his election, which happened later.
Hmm.
Um, but we haven't gotten there yet. There's still plenty of things in between.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of events in between that. And
Yeah,
then yeah, the book that Woodward published, Raged, that was released on the 15th of September, and that basically talked about the 18 interviews. And then after that was the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when she passed away from cancer, and that caused a lot of panic, mainly due to who's going to replace her in the Supreme Court,
yeah,
and that would allow Trump to have a nomination and like right before the election. And this
yes,
happened to a point with Obama, and there was a lot of dispute over what the right thing is to do. And Obama's was it wasn't as close to election like Trump's, so it caused a lot of debate on this. But eventually, he had a nomination for Barrett.
yeah. And I think that it was definitely a good choice. Because Cody Barrett had definitely had a good um, previous roles, and then just to put a female figure in again to replace that spot, um, it really shows that he's not as bad, as some people make him out to be.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because a lot of people have very different views on this.
Yeah,
And then a lot of people see it as a way for Republicans to hold an advantage on the Supreme Court, which will affect future things that are being ruled in the Supreme Court. And then people even think that this will be a benefit for Trump in the future if, let's say, there's more more problems going on with him, and if it goes to court.
yeah,
Yeah. And then right around that time period was with the decision with Breonna Taylor case, and Louisville declared a state of emergency ahead of the grand jury decision, and that caused there was a lot of protests with that.
yeah. There's a lot of protests everywhere. I think as good
Yeah,
as they can be, at the same time, there's obviously negatives with destroying of property and stuff. But
yeah,
then also, like, you were trying to stop the spread of COVID-19, and those people, some of them didn't even respect it enough to wear masks. Like, I understand you're out there for a purpose and stuff, but you can still wear a mask while you're out there protesting
hmm,
and taking safety precautions instead of grouping up without masks. You know, doing the total opposite of what you really
yeah.
should be doing.
Well, and a major thing with protests in general, like protests, there's been a lot of protests about numerous topics over quarantine. And I think a major reason why is just people are like, it's like they're just sitting in one spot, they're locked down, and they just want to do something, or
Yeah,
they're kind of getting heated about a certain topic and they want to express themselves other than just social media. So
yeah,
it allows for a lot of outrage to happen, if that makes sense to a point.
that does. Yeah,
Yeah, like in our area, in Milford, which is like kind of the main town in our area, there were like right before we left for college, there were protests about numerous things. There was the Black Lives Matter, and then there was the uh, restrictions on COVID, and they wanted to have them released so businesses can be open. And that was a major thing.
Yeah. There was another one when I believe it was Trump's son or Joe Biden's son. I don't remember which one came
I believe it
out.
was Trump's son. Yeah, because he was at the Dimick,
Yeah.
and
And
it
that was
was basically like a feud of like Trump and then Biden supporters across the street,
yeah,
and there'd
just
be like
because his
trucks
son.
like driving like on the road, and then like just like having all their exhaust going on the Biden people. It was
Yeah.
yeah, very
So
chaotic.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then also in September, late September, there was the presidential debates that happened, and then
Yeah.
yeah,
So we had the first one. That like set the tone obviously for the rest because it's the first one, and it was just they were filled with like you had interruptions and then they were going at each other like little kids. A
yeah,
lot of
very
interrupting.
chaotic. Yes, a lot
Yeah,
of interruptions. Yeah,
and it really made them look unprofessional. You know,
yeah,
for the two people who are going to lead our country.
yeah. Because and the moderators, they're trying their best with it, and like there's points where they just couldn't do anything about it. Because like if they're
Yeah,
not gonna listen to it, they can't do anything to moderate in general.
yeah,
But like they tried to have talking points on the climate change, and then with COVID, of course, and then there was the claims of voter fraud that Trump was saying, and they're trying to discuss that, but it was just so chaotic they couldn't get to it clearly.
yeah,
Yeah, so
and
a lot of people they felt like they missed out on a lot of info that they could have gotten from it.
yeah. Um, I remember when like I hadn't watched the full thing, but I'd watched some of it, and but like after that debate, I was still like, I don't really know, what Joe Biden's about. Like,
Well, yeah,
there's so
yeah, and a lot of people, it's like they already know kind of what Trump's about just because the previous 4 years.
yeah, he's
So,
been president for 4 years.
yeah, which is pretty surprising. Like, just because it's very weird having Trump as president, just because of his previous life, I would say,
Yeah,
compared to others. But yeah, it's crazy. Um,
but I
oh,
mean,
what was the article you're talking about that was released on the same day as the debates?
yeah. So that same day, CNN, they came up with an article because back in 2018 there was these Japanese researchers who actually found a new enzyme
Mm-hmm.
that had actually just like mutated to eat plastic,
Yeah,
right? Which is it's a really good development,
it's a
and
game changer. Yeah.
yeah, and so people immediately they've got on it, and there's already being like $100 million building built for it, and all this stuff. They've already come up with a bunch of new strains, and they're trying to test and
Mm-hmm.
such because if you can like stop that all the plastic polluting everything, that's a huge game changer.
Yeah, and there's like a stat, and it's like 91% of plastics aren't reused or like
Yeah.
recycled, which is insane because it's just all getting filled in landfills and just sitting there, or it's like ending up in the oceans.
Yeah, and it's
Yes.
just ruining environments.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, renewable energy and just going green is a major thing for the future, and that's like a major thing with Biden, um, with his Green New Deal and
Yeah,
everything
and
like
I
that.
wonder maybe he even will in the future like promote this enzyme for the plastic and stuff because if he endorsed that, that'd be huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then right after the debate with Trump, there was when him and the first lady got COVID and they tested positive. That
Yeah, and
was, yeah,
that's
that
almost
caused
like
a lot of chaos because like people weren't sure how Trump would be with COVID, like health wise.
yeah, because he's an old man, and you
Yeah.
know how it goes. That's like
Yeah, with
the
older.
worst people to get it.
Yeah. But the being president comes with a lot of advantages, especially with the health care that they can get and the best facilities and
Yeah,
doctors. So it ended up working well for him. But a major thing that happened with it when he had COVID was when he had the mini parade thanking his supporters for their support while he was ill, and it put like a lot of people at risk that were in the car with him.
yeah,
And yeah, that was a major thing that was talked about, and people did not like that at all.
because that's just not smart. That's the opposite of what like the government is telling people to do, and then as the
Yes.
president, he goes and does it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
yeah, Trump just hasn't been that smart with handling COVID, I would say, in general.
yeah, that's probably
Yeah.
one of his downfalls, especially with the presidential debate.
Yeah. And then what was the quote? It was around summertime, and it was like he was joking around, being sarcastic, he was saying, and it was like injecting bleach or stuff like that to stop COVID. Yeah.
He was joking. That's funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, it was very very interesting quote of his.
Injecting bleach to stuff. That's so dumb.
Yeah, and yeah, people would always bring that up to him. It was like, I was being sarcastic. I guess your fake news can't understand sarcasm, he would be saying.
He likes to say that, which,
Yes.
but at the same time, he's the president. Like he needs to understand his responsibilities and how he should act.
How he communicates. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and I think definitely change that for future presidents.
yeah.
Um, but you know, like he still went excessive, like an excessive amount. Um, so I'm sure Joe Biden will bring that back
Hmm.
and hopefully give a better view of America because the outside, other countries,
It's kind of a joke.
yeah, America kind of looks like a joke at some
Yeah.
points,
Hmm.
which
Which is not something we would want.
no,
Yeah. And then there was warnings from Dr. Fauci that America was in for a lot of hurt regarding to COVID. And then
yeah,
yeah, but a major thing was that like there was still like we were having like voting records being broken even with the risk of COVID, which was incredible, I thought.
yeah. Um, but like at the same time, yeah, they started to develop the mail-in ballots, which is I
Yes,
think
and
a really good thing.
the early voting was a major key to that also.
Yeah, which you have the debate. There could be there's a lot of room for cheating going on. Um,
Yeah, voter fraud. Yep.
voter fraud. Yeah, but um, I had watched there was a video about it on YouTube that really put into perspective how how ineffective that would be still. Like you could do it just as effectively right there,
Mm.
at a poll, and
Yeah.
and at the same time, there's other positives to the mail-in. Like obviously, you can get things
Yeah.
done faster if they just count the votes as they come in
Hmm.
instead of doing it at a set date.
Hmm.
Um,
And I
and
think a
so,
major thing with the voter fraud is that there's so little cases of voter fraud in the past,
yeah,
even with like the mail-ins like previously, that it's like it doesn't do much in general.
it really doesn't. There'd have to be like a mass amount of
It would
like,
have to be insane amount. Yeah,
yeah, hacker
exactly.
or something like that mess with it.
Yeah.
Then there'd be
Or
like a
like
significant
outside,
problem.
yeah, or like outside countries interfering.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's like the major thing. And then there was when the elections were happening, and then prior, it was like Trump was posting on Twitter about the voter fraud, but then he also claimed early victory with the election. And then Twitter, they ended up hiding his tweet due to it being labeled as misinformation.
Yeah,
Just
which
yeah,
it just kind of is true.
yeah,
Like it, it's a good. I think it was a good tactic by him. Just so it kind of hyped up, his following.
mm,
Um, it was definitely a good thing for him. But all right, hold on. I have someone knocking at my door.
yeah, all good.
I'm, Joby has a project. He's recording. Clutch. Hold on.
All good. But yeah, Biden was projected to win the election, which was a major thing. Um, and it caused a lot of people um, like crowding up. Like in Philadelphia, there were groups gathering, which was crazy. Worldwide in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely interesting to see. Like a lot of this almost seems specific to the United States,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously the election is going to be, but some other things like obviously the Black Lives Matter protests are pretty specific to the United States. That it was
Mm-hmm.
going around worldwide, but you had
Yeah.
so many the I forget what date it was, but around like the beginning of October, they had hit like the 100th day in a row for just doing protests in a certain city,
Yes. Yeah.
which is kind of insane to think that people were going out for 100
Every
days in a row
day.
to protest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then I believe recently, around this week, there was stuff going on in France with policing, and another example um, of almost kind of like what was happening in America. I forget. I'm blanking on the person's name and the
I
exact
saw that.
situation. Yeah,
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 I forget what that was even about.
yeah. Um, and then what was the other CNN report you saw with Boy Scouts?
Yeah, so the Boy Scouts of America, um, not too long ago, about 2018, I believe, they had decided that they went into Title 11 bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
And then recently, CNN then reported that there were at least 92,700 claims of abuse against the Boy Scouts of America,
That's insane.
um, which is a lot, right?
Yeah, and more claims are being talked about
Yeah,
as time goes. Yeah.
and obviously you can tell it's one of those effects like when someone gets accused of being a rapist, and then a bunch of other girls come out.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah,
obviously it's
that because it
totally
kind
different
of gives
case.
them more of like field protection and that it's
Yes,
okay speaking out,
yeah.
which is the right thing.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's interesting to see this happening with the Boy Scouts of America, but
Yeah.
um, it's just interesting to me because I know personally I only tried that Boy Scouts for about a week when I was maybe 8,
Yeah.
and then I didn't enjoy the whole entire vibe and all the people involved.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can definitely tell the way they were run was very specific. So eventually they were going to become outdated. People were not going to be joining that anymore, and you can see that through the bankruptcy and then all these claims of abuse.
Yeah. And then now I think a major thing with the news now would be the COVID vaccine going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's the most current thing. Um, so you have like everyone's talking about Pfizer's vaccine. You
Yes.
also have a big company called BioNTech,
Yep.
and then also Moderna's vaccine. So
Mm-hmm.
all these work very similarly, um, but
It's
and
gonna
like
be a lot of
obviously,
time until
yeah,
those vaccines are distributed.
because you have that to go through the FDA, which they have already submitted everything to be approved. Um, So hopefully soon that's going to happen. And then there's a whole debate on who's going to get it first.
Yes. Yep. Whether it be healthcare workers or public education with
Yeah.
teachers. Yeah.
And then like you have nursing homes too, right?
Yes. Yep. Exactly. And
So
like
there's a lot of options.
public transportation,
Yes.
a lot of stuff going on. And then
So
there's also the threat of like black market stuff too, with being sold.
yeah,
Yep.
and that could even like cause like maybe fake vaccines to be sold and stuff like that, which would be a huge problem.
Oh
Um,
yes. Yeah. Hopefully nothing like that happens.
yeah, we can only hope though, because that's one of those things that it's so hard to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but maybe there could be some kind of government program or something that they put in that'll almost guarantee that everyone's getting the right vaccines and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
like I doubt the government would pay for everyone's vaccine. That's probably not going to happen. Um, but at least they can try to control it,
Okay. Yeah.
and hopefully we see that happen with Joe Biden,
Mm-hmm.
because he's much bigger on COVID than Donald Trump is.
Yes. And I feel like a major thing that people like they're thinking with COVID, it's like I can kind of relax now with these restrictions with masks because like the vaccine's coming out. But it's like you can't do that, you know what I mean? Because it's going to be so much time until it's actually distributed. And I think that's like a
Yeah,
major problem.
it definitely is, and
Yeah.
like not only that, but just it's been going on so long, and like they probably haven't seen it or happening around them. Like they haven't had probably too many family members who got it, so they're just like, you know what, I'm kind of bored of this, and
Yeah.
so they just move to like
And
forgetting about everything.
yes, and I feel like a lot of people forget that like we just got back like we're past the peak right now with COVID cases per day, pretty much.
Yeah,
And I
which
feel like
is
a
which
lot of
isn't.
yeah, and like previously we were put down like strict like quarantine, like COVID protocols, and now it's like we're kind of relaxed a little too much, I'd say, to a point.
For sure.
Yeah. But honestly, I feel like there's been a large improvement from what our community's been like since the start of COVID to now.
Yeah,
A lot more
in
people have
general.
been going with masks and wearing them consistently, which I'm happy with.
Yeah,
But
because at this point, it's just kind of a normal thing you do, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I kind of put on a mask wherever I
yeah.
go. I don't really care.
Because,
It's not a huge deal.
but like, I feel like at the start of COVID, a large like portion of people like didn't take it seriously because it's like, oh, it won't happen to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a major thing, like a funny thing at the start that reminds me of that was with Rudy Gobert with the NBA. If you remember that when he got COVID, he was like the first
Okay.
player to get it. And like he
Yeah.
was joking around about COVID and stuff. And he was like touching like mics and stuff, joking around. People thought it was funny. And then like a week later from that, he gets COVID. And then the NBA shut down. I think like that was a major thing like in the sports community that was like, oh shoot, like we're also involved with this.
Yeah. And with sports, it's physical contact. You can't avoid it. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, sports are affected a lot with COVID. It's
Yeah.
interesting how they've adjusted to it, especially with the no attendance allowed with a lot of sports. But now it's
Yeah.
starting to be, they're starting to allow attendance in NFL games, which is interesting. And then also with other sporting events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Um,
is
yeah. I think this reminds me, but there's like a funny story that happened to me. Um, I'd say like last week prior about, but I was at the store I work at, right? And there's like people that stop in and they buy like cigarettes and stuff. And I do uh, I like stock the coolers and fridges and stuff with drinks and do the floor and sweep. And there's a guy who bought a pack of cigarettes, right? And then he goes outside. He's like smoking outside in front of the store, which is fine. And he's wearing his mask and he's like lighting a cigarette. I'm like, okay, yeah, nothing different going on here, right? And then he lights a cigarette and then he's like trying to smoke the cigarette through his mask. I'm like, boy, what is going on here? And then he like keeps going and then he like gets a hole like burnt through the mask as he's smoking it. I'm like, what is going on here? And then I go outside and I like tell him like, oh, you can take off your mask and go to the like more to the side so you're not like near people. And he's like, oh no, it's okay, I'm almost done. I'm like, all right. And I just went back in. I was like, man, people got some weird ideas as solutions. But I don't know. It was very weird.
I, did he just like so he put the cigarette like in his mouth
Like
like
he had the mask on and then he was pushing the cigarette like into
in
it. And
so
then it
he
made
had
a
his
hole
mask in his mouth?
and then he was just smoking with the mask on. It was
That,
so dumb. I was
that's
like,
so
what is
gross.
this right now? Yeah, it is very weird, I would say.
Yeah.
But
I can appreciate the fact that he's
he
trying to do
put
the
an
right thing.
effort. Yeah, like he was thinking probably to himself that he's doing the right thing, but he just wasn't there.
Yeah.
I don't know. People have their dumb moments, and some more than others, I guess.
Yeah. He could have even driven home and smoked, right? Like,
Yeah, I don't know. Very weird. But I just hope that the spike after Thanksgiving isn't too bad with COVID. And
yeah,
there's been,
because everyone's traveling.
yes, everyone's traveling. They tried to put the 10-person limit, I know in New York, for like gatherings, especially with like Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So hopefully that was followed and wasn't too bad. But I
I
know
know
what were you saying?
like the governor, right? I believe it was Tom Wolfe, and he
Yeah,
said
for PA.
yeah, there was the whole restriction on people going into other like your family going into like if you're a cousin going into their house, you have to wear a mask,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Which a lot of people were outraged by that.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's understandable, but at the same time, that is like kind of like crazy of a thing to do.
Mm.
And I doubt many people followed it, right?
Yeah.
So, but at least he tried.
Yeah. It's just like it's a very strange time right now, and it's just gonna be different. Like in the future, I think, especially with how people treat being sick and things. Because like masks, like here in America, weren't really common for people to wear in general, unless you're a healthcare worker.
Yeah,
Like it was so cheap to buy masks at one point, and now it's like insane to buy them, just in
yeah,
general.
because you can go to Walmart and there's that one brand that's like all over the store, and
Hmm.
it's like I think probably $10 a mask,
Yeah, it's crazy.
but like and it's like all it looks all nice and it's like blue or whatever, but like
Yeah.
that's so ridiculous.
Hmm. Yeah. And then there was with Cuomo in New York. He was talking about how they're planning on having hospitals sharing their patients across and like transferring them, and then like sharing their staff so there isn't like overcrowding at hospitals, and so that all the hospitals in area they're like balanced out so there isn't like so let's say there's like a huge spike of cases in one area, they'll be able to accept those patients in and then they can move around the others, so there's never a point where there's like patients that can't get their care.
Yeah, which is it's a really good thing because I know he had a really good quote from when he was talking about that, right?
Oh yeah, he did. It was something to the point where it was like you can build hospital beds but you can't build doctors. which is really true. It'll cost money to build the hospital beds, but you just can't get like doctors out of nowhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's like 10 years of just schooling.
exactly. So you have to get like volunteers from outside states or like retired healthcare workers. That's like the only
Yeah,
thing you can do. And there was they were talking about it in the conference meeting, and it said there is about 30,000 healthcare workers that volunteered and came into New York, which I thought was very interesting.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah, very good.
Because I mean, like, I'm sure if you're a healthcare worker, like, you want to do that, right?
Hmm.
That's just that was your job, and so I'm sure, like, even if you're retired, you're like, this is a huge thing. I should help. It just feels right.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
which I know a few healthcare workers, and it's tough for sure.
Oh yeah,
But
definitely. And I
uh,
think like a major thing that brought a lot of them out was when they saw what happened to Italy with COVID, if you remember that. That
yeah,
was like
that
at the
was
start.
first.
Yeah, it was really bad. So it made a lot of people that could help and volunteer, they did, and try and prevent that from happening here.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, and it's even like had a big increase in just people enjoying science, and really looking into science rather than their own beliefs.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Having more open mind to it. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Yep.
yeah. And of course, you still have the people who are like believe it's a hoax or whatever. But you're always gonna have those people, right? Like you have the Flat Earth Society.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. Wasn't it Kyrie Irving, uh, who who was a player in the NBA that believed into that for a while, a
yeah,
bit?
I think
I
so.
think
There
it
was another
was.
one.
Yeah. Yeah, he does not like talking about that now. Yeah,
uh,
a lot of trolling going on with that.
yeah, it's just like when you're like such a public figure and you kind of just believe something like not true, like
Hmm.
something that extreme, you're bound to like get made fun of, and hopefully that it teaches him, the right thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I get that. Um, man, we're coming up to the 50-minute mark, which is it went by really quick. Do you have like any closing remarks you want to talk about before we end the podcast?
Did you see the Mike Tyson fight?
Yes, I did. I did. That was very interesting. I didn't know how it would go, especially because they've been retired for so long.
Yeah.
And it's like I was hoping they could live up to the hype of the fight and it wouldn't just be sad watching old people trying to box one more time.
Yep.
And yeah, and then
But
there was also the Jake Paul fight.
yes,
Oh my,
versus Nate Robinson.
that was so bad. Did you see what happened in that?
Yeah. So Nate Robinson just gets absolutely he gets knocked down 3 times, right?
Oh
In
yeah,
2 rounds, and
it
he
was
gets
so
pretty
bad.
much knocked out the last one.
Yeah, he just kept running straight at it, and it was like that's just gonna add more force to Paul's punches. I was like, oh boy.
Yeah, it just like it almost seems like he didn't properly train, which I then also found out that he
Yeah,
didn't have any sparring
yeah, he
partners,
didn't have any sparring like at all in
which
his
is
camp, which is like unheard
ridiculous.
of. Like
You can't
that's
do that.
nuts. No, and the thing is with Robinson, he didn't have any experience with that. Like he's an athlete, but like he didn't know how to box at all.
Yeah,
It was sad watching, and the memes were very fun to look at
yeah,
though. That very
uh,
creative. Yes,
yeah,
but the Tyson fight, it's sad to see that ended in a tie though. I was hoping Tyson was gonna win there.
yeah. He definitely he's a clear fan winner for sure.
Yes, yes, I think so. It was very good though, and it lasted 8 rounds.
Yeah, which is longer than Nate Robinson
Very
last.
good. It was 2 minute eight. Yeah, it was 2 minutes per round, is very good. But I'm curious what the next thing they're gonna do is. I'm curious about
Yeah,
that.
because Mike Tyson said he's going to continue, which is
Yes.
just hilarious.
Yes.
Um,
I
he's
love
still good though.
yes. It was so funny though with the closing interview they were doing and with what Tyson was saying.
Yeah,
Dude, oh, it was so funny. But
the guy asked him. He was like, "Do you think you won?" He's like, "Yeah, I think I won, but I'm fine with a tie."
yeah, I would never imagine Tyson saying some of the stuff he was saying. I was like,
Yeah,
boy, all right.
he's gonna change, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting seeing that in the future.
Oh man.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Dustin, for coming on to the podcast, and hopefully we can continue making episodes over the break and maybe into next semester, which would be great.
Yeah, I would enjoy that. I enjoyed this episode, even
Yes,
though we had to re-record it. It was still
yes,
fun.
that oh, if we can find both recordings, well, the first recording, that'd be nice. But I think this episode went pretty well. So
Yeah.
yeah, all right, thank you. And
Thank you.
yeah, you can find future podcast episodes on YouTube, and you can find the episodes on the Makerspace podcast channel. All right, thank you, and bye.